Hello and welcome back. You're listening to Unreliable Sources, your bi-weekly briefing for mystery lovers, thriller junkies, and suspense addicts. I'm Mike Donohue, thriller author and man with 43 unread Kindle samples and 0 regrets. Let's get into the show. Today we're diving into one of the more fascinating pieces of genre drama I've come across in a while. What happens when one of crime fiction's biggest names crosses over into true crime podcasting and things potentially go sideways? We'll run through some new releases, including a Don Winslow collection I've been genuinely excited about, and tackle a topic I know hits close to home for a lot of you. How do you actually claw your way out of a reading slump? I've got some specific recommendations depending on exactly where your brain is at right now. Plus the usual, what I've been reading, listening to, and watching. Let's get into it. Let's kick things off today with some recent headlines from the Book and Crime Beat. Defector published a takedown of sorts of Killer in the Code, the new true crime podcast from Michael Connelly, the guy behind Bosch and the Lincoln Lawyer and about 100 million other books sold, certified grandmaster of the fiction genre. The podcast claims to have identified the same man as both the Black Dahlia killer and the Zodiac. The accused died in 1993. His family is very much alive. Journalist and true crime author Elon Green consulted cryptoanalysts who argue the key cipher is simply too short to produce an unambiguous solution and found documented evidence suggesting the suspect was 500 miles from most of the crimes. His conclusion, the team started with a theory and worked backwards, confirmation bias wearing a detective's badge, or using an author's pen. What I find fascinating is how genre-specific that trap could be. We're wired to find patterns. It's literally what we love about thrillers. Someone who's spent a career constructing airtight puzzles might be especially susceptible to seeing a solution that fits a little too neatly. Link to the article in the show notes. Definitely worth a read. Okay, this next one is a bit of a tangent, but I just couldn't resist. The New York Times Magazine recently ran a piece on what they call the diary trap, the guilt spiral that comes from keeping a journal badly or not at all. As a writer, I have always felt vaguely ashamed that I cannot maintain a proper diary. What I can do is fill up legions of small notebooks with stray lists, grocery lists, quotes pulled from what I'm reading, quotes pulled from the internet, and the occasional fragment of a book or plot idea. Apparently, that is completely legitimate practice with a long literary history, and I'm choosing to take this article as full absolution. If you've ever felt guilty about your journaling habits or lack thereof, check out this article. Pandora Sykes published a beginner's guide to translated books on her Substack recently, and while it's not genre-specific, there's a direct line, in my mind, to crime fiction. Translated crime has exploded in the last decade. Nordic noir, of course, kicked the door open, and what's come through since is remarkable. Japanese mysteries, Icelandic psychological thrillers, Italian procedurals with political roots. If you haven't been paying attention to what's arriving in English translation lately, you're missing some of the most inventive and exciting books in the entire genre. Finally, on the adaptation front, Mike Flanagan, the man behind The Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass on Netflix, has announced he's adapting Stephen King's The Mist. And at this point, Flanagan appears to be on a personal mission to bring every significant King property to the screen before anyone can stop him. And you know what? Based on his track record, I genuinely hope he succeeds. Okay, let's take a look at what's new and notable in bookstores or on library shelves recently. The Final Score by Don Winslow. I'll have more on this in a moment, as it's my current read, but if you've been sleeping on him, wake up. Winslow supposedly retired from crime fiction, and then quietly demonstrated that the short form in these 6 novellas might be where his gifts burn the brightest. Such a Perfect Family by Nalini Singh. Singh is one of those writers who seems capable of doing anything, and this domestic suspense thriller is a sharp pivot. A family whose immaculate public face begins to develop some very dangerous cracks. Dead First by Johnny Compton, Compton is carving out a genuinely interesting lane at the intersection of horror and crime fiction, sort of like the man that blurred the book, Paul Tremblay. And this one looks like it delivers the same unsettling atmosphere he brought to The Spite House. Definitely a writer to watch. The Midnight Taxi by Yosha Gunasekera. A debut I'm keeping my eye on. A Sri Lankan American taxi driver in New York City discovers her last fare of the night dead in her back seat. Classic setup and trope. And of course, she becomes the prime and potentially only suspect. What follows is a 5-day scramble across all 5 boroughs to try to clear her name. All right, let's get into this episode's feature. Breaking out of a reading slump. It's something I think every reader has experienced, but nobody really loves to admit. Sure, you might have the teetering nightstand stack, the Kindle stuffed with samples you've opened or not opened, and a brain that has just simply gone on strike. You sit down with a book, read 4 pages, reach for your phone, check the same 3 apps in a loop, and just keep repeating until you fall asleep. Sound familiar? Yeah, me too. More often than I'm potentially like to admit, which is awkward when you host a podcast about books. Here's the thing though. Mystery and thriller fiction is genuinely engineered, I believe, to rescue you from this state. Your brain is hardwired to pursue open questions. The right thriller exploits that wiring mercilessly from page 1. The trick is matching the right book to where your brain actually is, not where you wish it was. So here's how I think about it, depending on where you are on the slump spectrum. If you need a fast, no commitment win, something that you can start and finish almost in a single sitting and feel good about, go straight to Frida McFadden's The Crash. 8 months pregnant, fleeing a crumbling life during a blizzard, the protagonist wakes up in a stranger's cabin where the couple's helpfulness feels deeply, wrongly off. The misery DNA here is obvious and completely intentional. Chapters are short, the cliffhangers are relentless, and the whole thing can be polished off in a long afternoon. Sometimes that first win is all your reading muscles need to get the engine turning again. If you want something with a bit more weight, I'd recommend Lisa Jewell's None of This Is True. It's a masterclass in what an unreliable narrator can do when handled with genuine craft. A podcaster gets pulled into the strange orbit of a woman who shares her exact birthday. The story is told through podcast transcripts, documentary footage, and shifting perspectives that keep you perpetually off balance. Jewell is a master at this. I talked about this one on an audio, which I took on audio a few episodes back. It had me genuinely unsettled in ways I did not anticipate. If you want to go somewhere completely unfamiliar, and this is often one of the best slump remedies, try a translated thriller. Yoshiko Nishizawa's The Man Who Died 7 Times is a Japanese mystery built around a time loop premise. A teenager is cursed to relive the same day and must solve his grandfather's murder before his chances run out. The Guardian called it Groundhog Day meets Knives Out, and that pitch is pretty much perfect, I think. It's from Japan's Shin Honaku tradition, Golden Age puzzle logic with a metaphysical twist, and it reads unlike anything else you'll likely to pick up this year. Finally, if you're completely new to the genre or returning after a genuinely long break, The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides remains one of the best slump busters I know of. A famous painter shoots her husband 5 times in the face and never speaks another word again. A psychotherapist becomes obsessed with cracking her silence. The slow Hitchcockian build leads to one of the most discussed endings in recent thriller history. More readers have come back to the habit through this book than almost anything else published this side of Gone Girl. The full list, 10 books in total with links, is up on my blog right now at mikedonohuebooks.com/blog. Whatever stage of slump you're in, there's sure to be something on that list calibrated for exactly where you are and what you need. Keep on reading. Let's wrap up this episode with what I'm reading and watching. As I mentioned earlier, right now I'm deep into Don Winslow's The Final Score, the novella collection I flagged in New and Notable. I want to be a little more specific than the teaser I gave earlier because this deserves it. While Winslow is rightly celebrated for the Cartel trilogy and The Force, among others, these novellas prove that his craft actually sharpens when stripped to essentials. There is not a wasted word in any of these, not a single unnecessary beat. The title story, about a career criminal, one impossible casino job, and a wife whose future might depend on it, is pure distilled heist mechanics executed with precision. If you're going to read one thing this month, this would be my vote. On audio, I am listening to something completely different. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jesse Sutanto, read by Eunice Wong. I'll be honest, I'm a bit late to this. It won a bevy of awards a couple years ago. And if I'm also still being honest, it took me a couple hours to really get into this book and get all the characters and POVs sorted in my head. But now I am cruising towards the finish and absolutely loving this book. Vera Wong is a nosy, opinionated Chinese tea shop owner who discovers a body in her shop and immediately decides she's going to solve the murder because what else would a Chinese mother do? If you like the warmth and ensemble character energy of Osmond's Thursday Murder Club books, this scratches a very similar itch. It's definitely less intricately plotted and less outwardly violent, but the character charm is completely real. The second book is already out, which is a genuine relief for me because I'm going to want more of this the moment I finish. On TV, I've been mostly watching the Winter Olympics the past few weeks. Not strictly crime, of course, unless you count the ice dancing judging drama. I've still got a few episodes of Steel left on Prime. I'll circle back to once the Olympics are over and the games wrap up. Stay tuned for a review of that one. All right, that's a wrap for episode 16. Let me leave you with this week's question. Have you been in a reading slump recently? And what pulled you out of it? I want your actual go-to fixes. Was it a specific book, switching formats to audio, a late-night spiral through book talk recommendations you normally never consider? I'm genuinely curious, and I'd love to feature listener picks on a future episode. You can email me at mike@MikeDonohueBooks.com or find me on Blue Sky at MikeDMystery or Instagram and Facebook at Mike Donohue Books. This has been Unreliable Sources. I'm Mike Donohue. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay sharp, follow the clues, and don't trust anyone who skips to the end.